If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to share isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about how wisdom, patience, and love can win in ways revenge never could. My name is Margaret Harper, though most folks just call me Maggie. I'm 59 years old, retired after 32 years of teaching literature at Savannah High. These days, I spend my mornings tending to the rose bushes my late mother planted behind the old Harper farmhouse, and my evenings sipping sweet tea on the porch while the crickets play their songs. Life at my age moves a little slower, and I thought I'd finally earned that peace until the day I overheard something that would break my heart and test everything I'd ever believed about family. You see, my brother Henry was the only family I had left. After Mama died, it was just the two of us. He was older by 3 years, stubborn, charming, with a salesman's smile and the kind of confidence that could fill a room. We grew up in a modest southern home with cracked window panes and chipped paint. But Mama always said we were rich in spirit. Henry believed her, maybe too much. When Daddy passed, Henry stepped up as the man of the house. But he also inherited Daddy's business, a small construction firm that built homes across Savannah. Over the years, that little company grew into something big, something people respected, and I was proud of him. Lord, I never married, just never met a man who matched my peace. So Henry's daughter, Lila, became the light of my life. When her mama died young, I helped raise her. I was there for her first recital, her first heartbreak, her first job interview. She used to say, "Aunt Maggie, you're my second mom." And I'd laugh, telling her, "No, honey, I'm the cooler version." Lila was gentle, all heart, with that same crooked Harper smile, but her mama's patience. She'd sit with me on the porch for hours, talking about books and life, dreaming of traveling to Italy. She used to sketch old houses and say she wanted to restore them someday, just like her daddy. Henry adored her, or so I thought. I believed he'd give her the world, but time changes people. And money changes them faster. When Henry remarried, everything shifted. Denise came into our lives like a warm breeze hiding a storm. She was all polished charm, mid-40s, blonde highlights, bright lipstick, and a laugh that sounded like clinking glass. I wanted to like her. I really did. She was polite at first, always offering to help with Sunday dinners, bringing fancy wines I couldn't pronounce. But underneath it all, there was a coldness in her eyes. It's a kind that measures people not by heart, but by worth. Lila never trusted her. "She doesn't love Dad, Aunt Maggie," she'd whisper. "She loves what he's built." I'd hush her, saying maybe Denise just needed time to fit in. But deep down, I felt it too. Something wasn't right. Then came the years of success. Henry's company landed bigger contracts. His name appeared in the papers, and suddenly, my humble brother had become Mr. Harper, CEO. He started wearing tailored suits instead of work shirts, talking about legacy and partnerships. Denise was right there beside him, playing the part of the perfect wife. By the time I turned 57, I noticed how often Leela's name disappeared from Henry's conversations. He'd stopped calling her my girl and started saying things like, "She doesn't have the drive for business." Denise had 2 sons from her first marriage, Grant, and Mason and Henry began grooming them as his successors. Lila was still working in accounting at the firm, quietly keeping things running. But her stepbrothers treated her like a glorified assistant, and I could see her light dimming. I'd invite her over for tea on Saturdays, and she'd smile, but her eyes told the truth. "Aunt Maggie," she'd say softly, "I'm trying, but they act like I don't exist." One night she came over in tears. "Dad's changing his will," she said. Denise mentioned it at dinner. She said he wants to balance things fairly. What does that even mean? I told her not to jump to conclusions. "Your daddy loves you, Lila. He might just be trying to plan ahead." But even as I said it, my stomach twisted. I'd seen too many families torn apart by greed during my years teaching siblings who stopped speaking, parents who picked favorites. I never thought it would happen to us. Weeks later, Henry invited me to the house for Sunday dinner. Denise had outdone herself candles, silverware polished to a mirror shine. Her sons dressed like they were meeting royalty. I brought my pecan pie, the same one Mama taught me to make. As we sat down, Denise lifted her glass and said, "To family and new beginnings." Something in her tone made me pause. Lila wasn't there. When I asked, Henry said, "She's busy. We'll see her next week." But I could feel the distance in his voice, like he was already pushing her out of his world after dinner. While Denise poured coffee, Henry asked me to stay a while. "Need your help with some papers," he said. I followed him to his study, the same one Daddy used to keep his old ledgers in. And that's where everything began to unravel. The room smelled of bourbon and cedar. The light dim, only the desk lamp glowing. He sorted through some files, muttering about trust updates. I nodded politely, not wanting to pry. After a while, he excused himself to take a call and stepped out, leaving the door half open. That's when I heard her voice, Denise, from the hall. "Henry, you need to finalize it before she turns 30. You said you'd remove her from the will and add Grant and Mason. Don't back out now." Henry sighed. "She's my daughter, Denise. It doesn't feel right." "She doesn't deserve it," Denise hissed. "She's too soft. She wastes the business. Let's be practical. My boys can handle it. You said yourself she's not ready." And then Henry said something that broke my heart clean in two. "Maybe you're right." I froze. My breath caught in my chest, tears pricking my eyes. I couldn't move, couldn't think. The same man who used to carry Lila on his shoulders, who once promised me she'd always have a home here, was now quietly agreeing to erase her from his life's work. When they left the hall, I slipped out the back door, the night air heavy with the scent of gardenias and disbelief. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, gripping the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept seeing Lila's face, hearing her laugh. Her tiny voice from when she was 6 saying, "Aunt Maggie, you'll always protect me, right?" And I whispered into the dark, "Yes, baby, I will." What I didn't know then was just how far I'd have to go to keep that promise, or how deeply wisdom, not revenge, would become my only weapon. Because the next morning, I made a vow I would save Lella's future quietly, cleverly, without letting anyone suspect a thing. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Because this part of my story, it's where everything changed. Where I stopped being the quiet aunt who baked pies and became the woman who outwitted greed itself. The next morning, I woke with a strange calm. Maybe it was the kind of stillness that comes before a storm. I brewed my coffee, sat by the window, thought about all the times I'd warned my students that truth has a way of whispering before it shouts. Last night, it had whispered in my ear and now couldn't unhear it. Henry, my own brother, was planning to disinherit his daughter. I wanted to march right over to his house, to shout and scream, to shake sense into him. But I knew that wouldn't work. Denise would twist my words, and Henry, proud as he was, would dig his heels in deeper. No, I needed to plan something slow, quiet, and sure. When you've lived 59 years, you learn that wisdom doesn't roar. It moves like water, soft, patient, but it finds a way through stone. So I started small that week. I visited Lila at her apartment, a little one-bedroom near downtown Savannah. She was at her desk, surrounded by piles of invoices, her hair tied up, eyes tired but still glowing with that same kindness I'd always loved. "Aunt Maggie," she smiled, "you look like you've been up all night." I chuckled. "Maybe I have. But listen, baby, I want you to start keeping copies of your work at the firm. Everything you handle, every project, every account. You never know when you might need proof of what you've done." She frowned. "Proof? Why would I just trust me?" I said softly. "Sometimes doing the right thing isn't enough. You have to show it too." She hesitated, then nodded. "All right, Aunt Maggie." Over the next few months, I watched quietly as Henry's company shifted more power toward Denise's sons. They got promoted fast. Meanwhile, Lila was buried in work no one credited her for. She was the backbone, but invisible. Henry stopped visiting me as often, and when he did, he was distracted. He'd brag about Mason landing a big client or Grant learning the ropes. I'd listen, smile politely, and file every detail away. But the part that hurt the most wasn't the favoritism. It was the slow erasure of Lila's place in the family she'd helped hold together. At gatherings, Denise would forget to set a plate for her. When family photos were taken, she'd say, "Oh, let's just get one of the boys and their dad first." Each time, I bit my tongue because wisdom isn't silence. It's timing. Then came the evening that sealed my resolve. It was mid-September. The air was thick with that southern humidity that makes even the trees look tired. Henry invited me over for a family discussion. I knew what that meant. Denise sat beside him, a folder on the table, her nails tapping it like she couldn't wait to open it. Lila was across from them, pale, quiet, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Henry cleared his throat. "We're updating the company's succession plan," he said, "and I wanted to make sure you both understood what's happening." He looked at Lila, but not the way a father looks at his child. More like a boss about to deliver bad news. "You'll still have your position at the firm, of course, but the business ownership. Assets will transition to Mason and Grant. They've shown a real aptitude for leadership." The silence that followed was unbearable. Lila's lips trembled. "Dad, are you saying I get nothing?" Denise jumped in smoothly. "Oh, don't make it sound so harsh, dear. You'll be comfortable. We're just securing the company's future." That was it. The way she said "we," like the Harper name no longer belonged to us, like we were guests in our own legacy. Lila got up and left without another word. I stood there, the air burning with tension, and said quietly, "Henry, you're making a mistake you'll regret." He didn't meet my eyes. Maggie, don't start. This is business. No, I said. This is blood. Then I walked out. That night I found Lila sitting in her car outside her apartment, her head resting on the steering wheel, shoulders shaking. I climbed in beside her, wrapped my arms around her, and whispered, "We're not done yet. You hear me?" "Not yet." She looked at me, eyes swollen. "What can we even do?" "Sometimes," I said, "the smartest way to fight isn't to push back. It's to prepare." So I began my plan. Over the next few weeks, I quietly reached out to old friends, people who'd known Henry when he started his company. One of them, Mr. Callahan, used to be his first accountant. Another, Mrs. Jameson, had records of early contracts signed before Denise ever came into the picture. Piece by piece, I built a small archive of the company's true history, the paperwork that showed how Leela had been part of it from the start, how she'd handled payroll, tax filings, even drafted proposals that won key clients. I also noticed something else. Mason and Grant weren't exactly honest. They'd been using company funds for client entertainment that looked suspiciously like vacations. And guess who approved their expenses? Denise. I didn't confront them. I simply gathered, quietly, carefully, and then, one evening, fate handed me the opportunity I'd been waiting for. Henry called to invite me to the upcoming family reunion, the one we held every year at Mama's old farmhouse. "We'll be reading out the new will," he said proudly. I smiled, even though my stomach dropped. "Of course, I'll be there." When I hung up, I whispered to myself, "You shouldn't have chosen that place, Henry, because the farmhouse, that was my ground, my roots, my memory, and I had a plan that would make sure before that reunion ended, the truth would stand tall again and every lie would crumble." If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this is where everything I'd learned in life came together. Like puzzle pieces I didn't know I'd been collecting. The weekend of the reunion arrived hot and bright. The kind of Georgia summer day where the sun feels like it's pressing against your skin. I hadn't been to Mama's farmhouse in years, not since we buried her under the oak tree by the porch. But the moment I stepped out of my car, I smelled the hydrangea she used to plant every spring. It felt like she was watching, maybe even smiling. Cars lined the dirt road, cousins, in-laws, and business partners, all gathering for what they thought would be another easy celebration. But I knew better. This wasn't just a reunion. It was an unveiling. Inside, Denise had transformed Mama's home into her own stage. Balloons in the company colors, gold and navy, floated near the ceiling. There was a catered buffet, name cards, even a banner that said the Harper legacy continues. I smiled to myself. We'll see about that. Henry was in his element, shaking hands, laughing loudly, showing off his sons like prized racehorses. Mason, tall, dark-haired, mid-30s, had that arrogant smirk that came from thinking life would always open doors for him. Grant, a few years younger, was quieter, but with the same glint of entitlement in his eyes. And then there was Lila, standing near the back, wearing a soft lavender dress, holding a plate she hadn't touched. Her smile was polite, but her eyes, they were tired. When she saw me, her face lit up. "Aunt Maggie." I hugged her tight. "You ready?" She whispered, "I don't know what you're planning, but I trust you." I smiled. Good, because tonight, baby, we're not the quiet ones anymore. As people settled down for dinner, Denise stood at the center of the room holding a microphone. Lord, she loved a microphone. Before dessert, she announced, Henry has some exciting updates about the company's future. We're all family here, and we believe in transparency. That word transparency nearly made me laugh out loud. Henry began reading the new will aloud. His voice was steady, proud. Upon my passing, Harper & Co. will be transferred in full to Mason and Grant Harper. To ensure the family business remains within capable hands. My jaw tightened. Denise's eyes sparkled. But then, just as Henry reached for the next page, I stood up, Henry. I said calmly, before you go any further, I think there's something you should see. Every head turned. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small brown envelope. You always told me honesty builds empires. Well, I brought a few pieces of honesty with me. Denise's smile faltered. Maggie, what are you doing? Just sharing transparency, I said. I handed the envelope to Henry. He frowned, opened it, and began reading. His expression changed from confusion to disbelief, then to something close to fear. What is this? He whispered. Company expense reports, I said. The ones Mason and Grant filed last quarter. You might notice some client trips that don't exist. Some entertainment expenses paid to a resort in Mexico. The room went silent. Mason's face turned red. You went through our business records. That's illegal. I smiled thinly. No, sweetheart. It's protective. Lila's name was on some of those transactions, the ones your mother approved. That means when the IRS comes knocking, they won't call you. They'll call her. Lila's eyes widened. Henry looked from her to his sons, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't breathe. Denise tried to grab the papers. You're twisting things. I held up my hand. Oh, I'm not done. I reached into my bag again and pulled out an old flash drive. This holds the company's founding contracts. You'll see Lila's signature on every early agreement, the same ones that brought in your first clients. Your daughter built this company beside you, Henry. You just forgot because someone whispered loud enough in your ear. Henry sank into his chair, his face pale. Is this true? He asked, voice trembling. Denise stammered. Henry, she's trying to cause trouble. She's always been jealous. I leaned closer, my tone calm but firm. Henry, for 30 years, I've watched you work yourself to the bone to build that business. But when Mama died, you stopped listening to your heart. You've started listening to greed. The room was utterly still. Henry looked at Lila, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. Tears shimmered in his eyes. Lila, I didn't know. Denise slammed her wineglass down, red spilling across the table. This is absurd. You're letting her manipulate you. She's always hated me. I straightened my shoulders. No, Denise. I just finally stopped pretending you were family. That's when Mason stood up, his voice loud and angry. You can't prove anything. You're just some old woman with papers from a dusty drawer, and right then, the front door opened. A man stepped in, tall gray suit, briefcase in hand. Actually, he said, she can. Everyone turned. I smiled. This is Mr. Callahan. He's been Henry's accountant since before you could spell the word. Client. Callahan placed a folder on the table. I've been reviewing the company's books. The discrepancies your aunt mentioned are very real. I'd also like to point out that transferring assets under false pretenses could have serious legal consequences. You could have heard a pin drop. Denise's face turned white. Mason sat down hard. Grant looked like he wanted to disappear. Henry covered his face with his hands. "Lord help me," he whispered. I reached over and touched his shoulder. "Help yourself first, Henry. Do the right thing." That night, everything shattered and everything began. Henry announced that the will would be voided and reevaluated. Denise stormed out, her sons trailing behind her. Lila just sat there in shock, tears spilling down her cheeks when it was over. And the guests had quietly left. Henry turned to me. "Maggie, I don't deserve your forgiveness." I shook my head softly. "You don't need forgiveness, Henry. You just need to remember who you were before greed whispered louder than love." He nodded, tears glistening. "You saved us." I smiled sadly. "No, Henry, I just reminded you of what Mama built." Lila came over then, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. "Aunt Maggie, I don't know how to thank you," I whispered. "Live the life you deserve, baby. And promise me when you build something, never let anyone take credit for your light." Asterisk, if you're still with me, take a second, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. Because what came next wasn't just about saving my niece's inheritance. It was about saving what little family we still had left. The morning after that explosive reunion, I sat alone on Mama's porch, sipping coffee from a chipped mug that still read Harper Hardware since 1958. The sun was barely up, the dew clinging to the grass like tears that hadn't yet fallen. The house was silent. Too silent. Henry hadn't come out of his room all morning. Lila was in the kitchen, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands trembling as she washed dishes that didn't need washing. I looked out toward the old oak tree, Mama's tree, and whispered, "Lord, I hope I did right. 'Cause sometimes, even when you win, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like grief. By noon, Henry finally came downstairs. His face looked older, softer somehow. He sat beside me on the porch, his hands folded like a man ready to pray. "Maggie," he said quietly, "I read those contracts again last night. Every signature, every note Lila made in the margins. She built this company with me. I just didn't see it." I nodded. "Denise made sure you didn't. She's been planting seeds for years. You just finally saw the weeds." He sighed, eyes heavy. "I've been a fool." "No," I said. "You've been human. We all want to believe that people we love have our best interests at heart. But sometimes love blinds us more than hate ever could." He gave a small, broken laugh. "You always were the wise one." I smiled faintly. I just listen more than I talk. The following weeks were chaos. Mason and Grant both resigned from the company, though not willingly. Denise moved out of their family home, claiming she needed space. Henry began meeting with lawyers to correct the will and repair the financial mess. And Leela, well, she bloomed. I remember the day she came to my little house outside Savannah, a stack of papers in her hand. "Aunt Maggie," she said, her voice trembling with excitement, "I'm starting my own firm, Harper Design Solutions. Not under Dad's name, mine. Her eyes were glowing the same way her mama's used to when she painted. I grinned. Well, I hope you're hiring, 'cause I've got years of bookkeeping experience and a mean sweet tea recipe for the office fridge. She laughed, hugging me. You're my first call, Aunt Maggie. That laughter, it healed something in me I didn't even know was broken. But peace doesn't come easy. 2 months later, Denise showed up at my door. She looked different. The sharp edges of her beauty had dulled, her hair slightly disheveled, her eyes tired. She carried a small purse and that same saccharine smile she'd worn the day she first called me Sweet Maggie. "May I come in?" she asked. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to slam the door. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe grace, made me open it. We sat in my living room. I poured her coffee, though I noticed her hand shook as she reached for the cup. "Maggie," she began, "I came to apologize." I folded my arms, studying her face. "For which part?" She gave a humorless laugh. "Where do I start?" "Manipulating Henry, lying about Lila, pushing you out of the family. You pick." I stayed quiet. Her voice cracked. "I thought if I built him up, made him believe we were this perfect power couple, I'd finally matter. But all I did was destroy the only real family I had." She looked at me, her eyes watery. "Do you believe people can change?" I sighed. "I believe people can choose to. Whether they actually do is another story." She nodded, staring down at her hands. "I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." And just like that, she left. I sat there for a long time after she was gone, staring at her empty coffee cup, the faint lipstick mark on the rim. I didn't know if her apology was real, but I knew forgiveness wasn't about her. It was about me freeing myself from the bitterness that could have eaten me alive. Weeks passed. Fall arrived. Leaves turned gold, the air crisp and clean. Henry called often, giving updates about how he was rebuilding his relationship with Lila. He'd stepped down from the company completely, giving her full control. She'd grown it tenfold. New clients, new energy, even a scholarship fund for young women in design.nd. And then, one evening in December, he invited me to a dinner at her new office. When I arrived, I almost cried. The place was warm, modern, but filled with touches that spoke of heritage. Mama's old photo on the wall, a plaque that read Harper Design Solutions built by women for the future. Lila stood at the front, giving a speech to her small team. Her voice carried confidence now, not fear. And when she said, "None of this would have been possible without my Aunt Maggie," who reminded me that silence helps no one, I had to look down, blinking back tears. Afterward, Henry came over, his cane tapping the floor, and slipped something into my hand, a small gold locket. "It was Mama's," he said softly. "She'd have wanted you to have it." Inside was a faded photo, me, Henry, and Lila, years ago, laughing on that same porch. I couldn't speak. I just hugged him, feeling time fold in on itself. The years of distance, the pain, the pride, all melting into forgiveness. And that night when I drove home, I realized something. We spend so much of our lives chasing approval money, comfort, when the real wealth is the strength to stand up when no one else will. Because when you've lived long enough, lost enough, loved enough, seen enough, you learn that the sharpest weapon a woman can ever wield is wisdom. So if you're still watching wherever you are, don't you dare give up. You've got everything you need already inside you, just like I did. If you're still listening, my dear friends, take a breath, and if you haven't yet, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Because this next part, this is where life came full circle. Where I learned that sometimes the people who break you aren't gone, they just come back to see. What's left standing? It was the spring of 2024, and everything finally felt calm. Lila's business was thriving. I'd started teaching bookkeeping classes at the local community center for women. It's trying to rebuild after divorce or loss. Women like me. Really? We'd sit in folding chairs with coffee and laughter, talking about second chances and survival. Henry visited often. Older now, softer, grateful. I could see the light coming back into his eyes when he talked about Lila. He even joked once, "Maggie, maybe we both grew up too late in life." And I said, smiling, better late than never. Brother, life had a rhythm again. Morning walks, Sunday dinners. Evenings spent listening to old Patsy Cline records while I crocheted scarves for the women at the shelter. Peace isn't loud. It's quiet, steady. It settles into your bones like a gentle rain. Then one morning, peace shattered with a single phone call. It was Henry. His voice was shaky. "Maggie, she's back." I didn't even have to ask who dot Denise. He told me she'd returned to town, claiming she wanted to make amends, help with the business, support Lila's success. Every instinct screamed that it wasn't about peace, it was about positioning. But I said nothing, only sighed and told him, people always come back when they see light. The trick is not letting them cast a shadow. Days later, at one of Leela's charity events, a grand gala downtown, I saw Denise for the first time in over a year. She looked immaculate. Coarse. Designer dress, perfect curls, but there was a flicker in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Not malice this time. Something like desperation. She walked up to me, glass of champagne in hand. "Maggie," she said softly, "you look well." I smiled, but my guard was up. I could say the same, though you don't strike me as the gala type these days. She gave a hollow laugh. "You're right. I'm not here for the lights. I'm here for forgiveness." Forgiveness. I echoed, my voice even. Or redemption. She swallowed hard. Maybe both. Before I could respond, Lila approached radiant in her emerald dress. Every bit the confident businesswoman she was meant to be. Her smile froze when she saw Denise. "Aunt Maggie," she said, glancing between us. "Did you know she'd be here?" "I didn't," I said quietly. But life seems to enjoy uninvited guests. The air between them was thick. Denise tried to speak. "Lila, I came too," but Lila cut her off, her voice trembling with emotion. "No, you came to destroy us once. Don't pretend this is about closure." The room had gone still, eyes subtly turning our way. Denise's hand shook as she set down her glass. "You think I don't regret it? That I haven't paid?" Lila's chin lifted, fire in her eyes. "You nearly ruined my father. You forged papers, stole money, and tried to erase me. What could you possibly say to make that right?" For once, Denise had no words, only tears. I reached for Lila's hand gently. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "sometimes letting someone speak doesn't mean you forgive them. It just means you've healed enough to listen." And with that, Lila stepped back. Then talk, she said, her voice steady. Denise looked between us, shaking her head. I lost everything. Henry's love, the company, my name. I live alone now, working part-time at a law office. Every night I wonder how I became this person. And the truth is, I wanted too much too soon. I thought power would make me matter. I studied her for a long moment. And what makes you matter now? She looked down, trying to do better. There was silence. Long, fragile silence. Then Leela said quietly, "You can start by staying out of our lives." Denise nodded, tears streaming down her face. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor until the sound faded into nothing when she was gone. Lila exhaled a long, shuddering breath. "I thought seeing her would break me," she said, her voice cracking. "But it didn't. It just reminded me how far I've come." I smiled. "That's the beauty of growth, honey. You outgrow the people who once terrified you." Later that night, after everyone had gone, I sat outside under the fairy lights strung across the courtyard. The air was warm, filled with the scent of night jasmine. Lila joined me, barefoot, her hair loose now, laughter soft and tired. "Aunt Maggie," she said quietly, "you saved me." I shook my head. "No, sweetheart, you saved yourself. I just handed you a flashlight." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in years, I felt true peace, because that's what healing really is. Not about revenge or victory, but quiet reclamation. Reclaiming your life, your voice, your worth. And if you're watching this, listening to my voice right now, I want you to remember that. No matter who betrayed you, no matter who walked away, no matter how many times life broke you, you can always rebuild. You can always bloom again. Because the roots of a strong woman go deeper than anyone can see. If you're still here with me, thank you for listening. And if you're new, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to say, I want you to hear it not just as my story, but as a reflection of your own. It's been almost 8 years since that night at the gala, since Denise walked away for good, since Lila took the reins of her future, and since Henry and I found peace where pain used to live. I'm 63 now. My hair is silver, my hands a little slower when I knit, but my heart, oh my heart, it's full. Lila runs a foundation. Now, she helps young women from small towns get business grants. Women who once thought they were too ordinary to build something of their own. Every time I visit her office, I see that same sparkle in her eyes, the one her mother used to have before life hardened her. It's strange how cycles can break when one person chooses differently. As for Henry, he retired last year, bought a small cabin near the lake, spends his mornings fishing and writing letters to his daughter. Real letters with ink smudges and coffee stains and all. He signs each one, "Love you more than yesterday." Sometimes when he sends me copies, I can see the remorse between his lines, but also the redemption. It's never too late to make amends. And me, I still teach. Every Wednesday, I sit with a dozen women in a bright little classroom downtown. Some of them just left marriages. Some are widows. Some are trying to figure out who they are after 30 years of being mom or Mrs. someone. We laugh, we cry, we drink bad coffee, and we talk about survival. Not the kind that's loud and dramatic, but the quiet kind. The one where you pay your bills on time, fix your own leaky faucet, and learn how to use a smartphone because you refuse to be left behind. I tell them what I learned the hard way. That betrayal can be a teacher. That broken trust can push you toward your purpose. That sometimes losing everything isn't punishment. It's redirection. And when they ask how I found hope again, always tell them this story about the night I overheard my brother planning to disinherit his daughter, and how one act of intervention saved not just her life, but all of ours, because that night wasn't about money or property. It was about legacy, not the kind written in wills, but the kind written in hearts. You see? Legacy isn't about what you leave for someone. It's about what you leave in them. And I left Leela with courage, with knowledge, and with love strong enough to stand against the world. Sometimes I sit by the window in the evenings, the sky painted in gold and lilac, and I think about the woman I used to be scared, tired, invisible. And I whispered to her, "You made it." Because she did. I did. And if you're listening right now, I want you to say that to yourself too. Say it out loud right where you are. You made it. You survived the heartbreaks, the losses, the loneliness. You learned. Whoa. You rose, and you're still here, stronger, wiser, braver than you ever thought you could be. So keep going. Start that small business. Learn that new skill. Paint, bake, write, teach, do whatever your hands and heart can still do. Because the lesson life teaches over and over is this: it's never too late to begin again. And if no one's told you lately, I'm proud of you. That was my story. Thank you for sharing your time, your ears, okay, and your heart with me. If this touched you, subscribe, share your thoughts below, and tell me where you're watching from. And remember, life may not always be fair, but it's always giving you chances to write your next chapter. So go ahead, pick up the pen. Your story isn't over yet.